Tonight, Kamala Harris takes the stage. This is the biggest speech of her life, and she is freaking out. Yesterday, Kamala locked herself in a hotel room and studied all night. The last Democrat who overprepared this much ended up dropping out.
Kamala Harris is stepping into the spotlight at a critical moment, with everything on the line. The stress has clearly taken its toll, as reports of her freaking out and locking herself away to prepare have surfaced. The stakes couldn't be higher for Harris, as this speech is seen as a make-or-break moment in her political career.
Well, the biggest reaction is, why didn't she do the things that she's complaining about? All of these things that she talked about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do everything, but she didn't do any of it. She could have done it 3.5 years ago. She could do it tonight by leaving the auditorium and going to Washington, D.C., and closing the border. She doesn't need a bill. I didn't have a bill. I closed the border and created the safest border we've ever had in the history of our country. She could have done all of these things, and she could still do them. She's got 4.5, 5 months left. She can go there right now. She can do all of the things, many of the things that she's talking about and complaining about.
Donald Trump lays into Kamala Harris, criticizing her for what he sees as her failure to act on her own promises. He points out that she could have taken decisive action at any point during her tenure, but didn't. Trump contrasts this with his own record, emphasizing his unilateral actions to secure the border, a move he frames as both necessary and effective. The message is clear. Harris talks, but she doesn't deliver, and time is running out for her to prove otherwise.
She's allowed millions of people to come into our country, many of these people totally unchecked, totally unvetted. Many of these people came into our country, think of this, from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums. And, Brian, there's many terrorists coming in. If they want to fix the border, they don't need a bill. The President of the United States, which is what I did. I didn't have a bill to close the border. I closed the border. I had the safest border. I had the least drugs coming into our country in 38 years. I had the least, you have the human traffickers are horrible, and they traffic in children and they traffic in women, mostly women. But I had the lowest number of, we went after them with a vengeance.
The implication is that Harris's inaction has directly contributed to a crisis, making her unfit for higher office.
But it's a lot different than 2008. Remember, that was after 2 Bush terms, Iraq war and a financial crisis, and the first black nominee. And remember, this guy, Barack Obama, gave a soaring speech in 2004 that really skyrocketed his popularity, and then he runs through the gauntlet in the Clinton machine during that primary. He earned it, and he came out of it, and hope and change made sense. Now, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have caused this country a lot of problems. People have lost hope because of the problems. People want change from the problems. So I expect her to, they're going to coronate her. They're going to probably just write her speech. She's going to say a bunch of soaring stuff that doesn't really matter much. It's this debate. It's the big debate in early September. That's the collision course everybody's waiting for.
Jesse Waters emphasizes the stark contrast between the historic rise of Barack Obama and the current situation with Kamala Harris. Where Obama's message of hope and change resonated deeply with a nation weary from years of war and economic crisis, Waters argues that Harris offers little more than superficial change. He suggests that the Democratic strategy hinges on her identity rather than any substantive policy changes, a tactic he believes won't resonate with a public facing real and pressing problems.
She didn't talk about child trafficking that she's allowed to happen because she was the border czar and she presided over the weakest border in the history of our country. It's an invasion. I was there today, as you know, Brett. It's an invasion of our country taking place at our border, our southern border. It's a total invasion. And now it's starting at our northern border also, through Canada. And she didn't talk about any of that because she talks, but she doesn't do. It's no action. But, look, other than that, it was a nice-looking room.
Trump continues his scathing critique of Harris, accusing her of ignoring the crisis at the border, which he describes as an invasion threatening the very fabric of the country. His hyperbolic language underscores the severity with which he views the issue and Harris's handling of it, Trump dismisses her speech as nothing more than empty words delivered in a well-decorated venue, further driving home the point that Harris is all talk and no action.
Kamala's aides told the DNC, "You better not be running behind schedule." And Kamala warned them not to cut her tribute video like they did with Biden. Now we know why her staff always quits. Kamala's people say this week has been a crescendo building to her. So we expect an emotional entree with a side of substance. Very small side. Team Harris says they're going to stay vague. Quote, "This is a rallying cry, not a policy speech." If this sounds familiar, it is. The slogan's about hope and change. We're going forward, not back. The focus on decency. It's all plagiarized from the Obamas. Yes, we can turned into yes, she can.
Waters paints a picture of a campaign in disarray, with Harris's staff under strict orders and the content of her speech carefully crafted to echo the messages of past Democratic victories. The decision to avoid substantive policy discussions in favor of broad emotional appeals is seen as a calculated move to connect with voters on a superficial level, rather than addressing the complex challenges the country faces.
But let me say one thing. I was coming here and I was looking at a liberal network and I was reading what they had at the lower part of their screen. And it said star-studded convention. And that's true. Oprah stood behind me. Little John came out and surprised everyone. There are reports that Katy Perry will be here tonight. We just heard the Dixie Chicks sing. I guess they're called the Chicks now. There's been a lot of stars. But there's some names that haven't been mentioned. Laken Riley, a college girl who went for a run and lost her life. Rachel Morin, a mother of 5 who went for a run and lost her life. Jocelyn Ngari, a 12-year-old girl who went to the convenience store and lost her life. All by illegal immigrants, all preventable, all a result of the perilous, dangerous, and irresponsible Harris-Biden border policies. You don't need legislation. You need a pen, and you need the will. And Harris could not find it in herself for 3.5 years to go to Biden and say, pick up your pen, whip out 212F, sign this into law because another girl should not lose their life. It is inexcusable. It is disqualifying for the role of President of the United States.
Kayleigh McEnany shifts the focus from the glitz of the DNC to the real-world consequences of Harris's policies, particularly on border security. By naming victims of crimes allegedly committed by illegal immigrants, she personalizes the impact of what she describes as Harris's dangerous and irresponsible policies. McEnany's approach is to contrast the star-studded convention with the lives lost, framing Harris as out of touch with the realities that everyday Americans face due to the administration's failures. Thanks for tuning in to the Red State Report. We want to hear your thoughts on today's topics. Leave a comment below and let us know where you stand.